The stars had watched Viraxis for 10,000 years. He had seen empires rise and fall like waves upon a shore. He had burned worlds and built civilizations. He was the Dragon Emperor, ruler of 3 galaxies, and his name made entire planets tremble. But tonight, he stood in a dirty alley behind a cheap diner on a forgotten space station, and he felt something he had not felt in centuries. He felt afraid. His son lay broken on the ground. KYR, his was his youngest child, barely 500 years old. In dragon years, he was still a teenager. He had always been difficult. He questioned everything. He argued with his father about duty and honor and what it meant to rule. 3 weeks ago, they had fought again, and Kyrus had said words that still burned in Viraxis' memory. "You don't care about anyone," Kyrus had shouted. "You just care about power. You've forgotten what it means to feel anything." Then he had run away. He had hidden his dragon form inside the body of a strange dog-like creature and fled to the outer edges of human space, where no one would think to look for a prince of the Dragon Empire. Viraxis had searched for him across 100 worlds. He had used every spy, every scout, every piece of technology his empire possessed. And finally, he had found him here, on this miserable station that smelled of engine, grease, and cheap food. But he had not found him fast enough. KYR is lay in a pool of his own blood. His disguise was failing. Patches of beautiful scales showed through the fake fur, shimmering with colors that did not exist in human vision. His breathing was shallow and wet. Neutron rounds had torn through his side, and even a dragon could not shrug off such weapons easily. Poachers had done this. Humans who hunted rare creatures and sold them to collectors. They had seen through Kyrus's disguise somehow, and they had tried to capture him. He had fought them off, but not before they had wounded him badly. Viraxis stepped forward. His own disguise was perfect. He looked like an ordinary human man, middle-aged, with gray hair and tired eyes. No one who saw him would guess that beneath this shell of flesh lived a creature older than most stars, a being whose true form could stretch across the sky and block out the sun. He would take his son now. He would burn this station and everyone on it. He would make an example that would echo across human space for 1,000 years. No one hurt his children. No one. Then a door opened. Light spilled into the alley, and a young woman stepped out. She was carrying a bag of garbage, which she dropped the moment she saw Kyrus. "Oh no," she whispered. "Oh no. Viraxis froze. He should kill her. She had seen his son's true scales. She was a witness. But something made him wait. Something made him watch. The woman did not scream. She did not run. She did not pull out a communication device to call for help or to alert the authorities about the strange creature bleeding in the alley. Instead, she knelt down in the filth and the blood, ruining her work uniform, and she touched Kyrus's face with gentle fingers. "Hey there," she said softly. "Hey, little one. You're hurt bad, aren't you? It's okay. It's okay. I've got you. I've got you." Kyrus whimpered. It was a sound Viraxis had not heard since his son was a hatchling, crying in the night for comfort. The woman made a soft noise in response, something between a hum and a coo, and she stroked Kyrus's head as if he were a frightened child, which, Viraxis realized, he was. "I'm going to pick you up now," the woman said. "I know it's going to hurt. I'm sorry. But I need to get you inside where it's warm and I can see what I'm working with." Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3. She lifted Kyrus. Viraxis stared. His son weighed nearly 100 kilograms in this form. The woman was small, clearly underfed, with thin arms and dark circles under her eyes. She should not have been able to lift him, but she did. She staggered under the weight, but she did not drop him. She held him against her chest and whispered comfort into his ear and carried him toward the door. "It's okay," she kept saying. "It's okay. I've got you. You're safe now. I've got you." She disappeared inside. Viraxis stood alone in the alley for a long moment. His mind, which had planned the conquest of galaxies, could not understand what he had just witnessed. This human woman did not know what Kiris was. She could not have known. To her, he was just a strange wounded animal, probably dangerous, definitely alien. She had no reason to help him. She had every reason to be afraid, but she had picked him up and carried him inside as if he were her own child. Viraxis walked to the window and looked in. The diner was nearly empty. A few humans sat at tables, eating food that looked terrible. The woman had laid Kiris on a table in the back and was digging through a small white box with a red cross on it. A first aid kit, meant for humans, useless for a dragon, but she was trying anyway. She cleaned the blood from Kiris's wounds with careful hands. She talked to him constantly, nonsense words, gentle sounds, the way a mother might talk to a sick child. She had no idea what she was doing. Her supplies were pathetic. Her knowledge was clearly limited, but she was trying anyway. Viraxis watched her work for a long time. He watched her sacrifice her own food to feed Kiris something that might give him strength. He watched her wrap him in her own jacket when he shivered. He watched her sit beside him and stroke his head and sing soft songs in a language Viraxis did not know. He had lived for 10,000 years. He had seen every kind of cruelty the universe could offer. He had seen species eat their own children. He'd seen civilizations burn themselves to ash over petty disagreements. He had learned, long ago, that the universe was cold and dark and cared nothing for suffering. But this woman cared. This small, fragile, insignificant human woman who would die of old age before Viraxis finished his next nap, who could be destroyed by a single thought from his mind, who had no power and no wealth and no reason to risk herself for a stranger, and looked at a wounded creature and decided to help. The dragon. Emperor stood outside in the cold and watched her through the window, and he felt something strange happening in his chest. Something cracking. Something shifting. Something he had thought dead for thousands of years stirring back to life. He did not burn the station. He waited. 3 days, Elena cared for the creature. She spent her rent money on food for it. She slept on the floor beside it. She cleaned its wounds twice a day and talked to it constantly and refused to leave its side even when the diner manager threatened to fire her. "Fire me then," she said. "I'm not leaving him." The manager did not fire her. He grumbled and complained and docked her pay, but something in her eyes made him keep his distance. The creature grew stronger. Its wounds began to close. It ate more and slept less. It watched Elena with intelligent eyes that seemed to understand far more than any animal should. On the third night, Elena woke to find those eyes glowing in the darkness. And the creature was changing. The disguise was failing. Fur melted away like snow in sunlight. The body shifted and stretched. And where a strange dog-like animal had been, there now lay a dragon dot. It was small, about the size of a large dog, but it was unmistakably a dragon. Wings folded against its back. Scales covered its body, shimmering with colors Elena had no names for. A long tail curled around its legs. Its eyes burned with inner fire. Elena stared. The dragon stared back. "Wow," Elena said finally. "That explains why you didn't like the kibble." The dragon made a sound that might have been a laugh. Then it spoke. Its voice was young and rough and scared. "Please don't be afraid of me." Elena took a deep breath. Then another. Her heart was beating very fast. A dragon. She had been caring for a dragon. Dragons were legends. Dragons were myths. Dragons were stories told to children about the old beings who ruled the stars. Before humans learned to walk, dragons were not supposed to be real. But here one was, lying on a table in a cheap diner, looking at her with fear in its glowing eyes. "Are you going to hurt me?" Elena asked. "No, never. You saved my life." "Okay then." Elena sat down on her sleeping mat. "What's your name?" The dragon blinked. Of all the reactions it had expected, this was clearly not one of them. "Kiris. My name is Kiris. I'm Elena. Are you hungry? I have some more protein bars, but I'm guessing you'd prefer meat. You're not afraid?" Elena thought about it. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "But you're still the same creature I found in that alley. You were hurt and scared and alone. Being a dragon doesn't change that." Kiris's eyes filled with something that looked very much like tears. "You're strange," he said. "You're the strangest human I've ever met." "Probably," Elena agreed. "Now meet?" They talked through the night. Kiris told her about his home, about the dragon empire that stretched across 3 galaxies, about his father, the emperor who ruled it all with iron claws. He told her about running away, about being tired of expectations and duty and the weight of being a prince. Elena told him about Earth, about her colony, about the dome that broke and took everything from her. She told him about traveling and working and surviving. She told him about choosing to be kind, even when the universe was cruel. "Why?" Kiris asked. "Why be kind? It costs you. It hurts you. Why do you do it?" "Because someone has to," Elena said simply. "Because every kindness matters. Because maybe if enough people choose to be good, the universe becomes a little less cold." Kiris was quiet for a long time. "I wish my father understood that," he said finally. "He's forgotten how to care about anything except power. He's forgotten what it means to just be kind." The door opened. Elena spun around. A man stood in the doorway. He was ordinary-looking, middle-aged, with gray hair and tired eyes. But something about him made the air feel heavy. Something about him made Elena's skin prickle with ancient fear. He stepped inside, and the room changed. The disguise fell away. The human shell cracked and dissolved. And where a man had stood, something else now existed. It was still shaped like a man, but it was made of darkness and fire. Scales of absolute black covered its body. Eyes like dying suns burned in its face. Wings of shadow spread behind it, filling the room, filling the world, filling everything. Power radiated from it like heat from a star. Elena could barely breathe. She could barely think. Every cell in her body screamed at her to run, to hide, to bow down and beg for mercy. She did none of those things. She stepped between the creature and Kiris. Her legs were shaking so badly she could barely stand. Tears streamed down her face from sheer terror. But she planted her feet and raised her hands and stood her ground. "I don't care what you are," she said. Her voice cracked and wavered, but she kept talking. "You're not hurting him." The creature looked at her. The Dragon Emperor, ruler of 3 galaxies, master of 1,000 worlds, looked at this small human woman who had placed herself between him and his son. He could destroy her with a thought. He could unmake her atoms and scatter them across the universe. She was nothing to him, less than nothing. But she stood anyway. Viraxis began to laugh. It was not a cruel laugh. It was not a mocking laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had just seen something impossible, something beautiful, something that had shattered every expectation. "Extraordinary creature," he said, and his voice was like thunder and music and the rumble of planets being born. "I am not here to hurt him. I am his father." Elena did not move. "Prove it." Kiris's voice came from behind her, small and tired and relieved. "It's okay, Elena. It's really him. It's really my father." Slowly, Elena lowered her hands. Slowly, she stepped aside. But she stayed close to Kiris, close enough to touch, close enough to protect if she needed to. Viraxis looked at his son. Then he looked at Elena. Then he looked at his son again. She stood in front of me, he said wonderingly. She knew what I was. She knew she couldn't stop me. And she stood anyway. I told you, Kiris said softly. Humans are strange. Strange, Viraxis repeated. He looked at Elena with those burning eyes, and for a moment, she saw something flicker in their depths. Something old and tired and lonely. Something that had forgotten what it felt like to be surprised. Strange indeed. Her name was Elena Chun, and she had been tired for as long as she could remember. She was 23 years old, but some days she felt like 100. Life had not been kind to her. When she was 16, a mining company had made a mistake with the atmosphere dome on her colony world. The dome had cracked. The air had escaped. 3,000 people had died in minutes, including her mother and father and little brother. Elena had survived only because she had been in the underground section of the colony, helping repair water pipes. She had heard the alarms. She had felt the ground shake. She had run to the surface and found nothing but bodies and silence and the cold. Empty stars looking down without pity. Since then, she had traveled across 12 star systems. She had worked in factories and farms and stations. She had cleaned toilets and served food and fixed machines. She had been hungry more often than full. She had been cold more often than warm. She had learned that the universe was a hard place that did not care about orphan girls, with nowhere to go. But she had also learned something else. She had learned that kindness was a choice. The universe might be cold, but people did not have to be. Every time she had been at her lowest, someone had helped her. A stranger had shared food. A ship captain had given her free passage. A doctor had treated her fever without asking for money. Small kindnesses from small people who had nothing but still gave what they could. Elena had decided, somewhere along the way, that she would be one of those people. She could not fix the universe. She could not bring back the dead or punish the company that had killed her family. But she could be kind. She could help when help was needed. She could make the darkness a little less dark for whoever crossed her path. So when she found the strange creature bleeding in the alley, she did not think. She did not calculate. She did not ask herself what it might cost her. She just acted. The creature was heavy and strange. Its blood glowed faintly, which was definitely not normal. Its skin kept shifting between fur and scales in a way that made her head hurt if she looked too closely. She did not know what it was. She did not care. It was hurt. It was scared. That was enough. She laid it on the table in the back of the diner and got to work. The first aid kit was almost empty. She had used most of the supplies last month on a refugee child who had burned his hand. But she had some bandages, some cleaning solution, some protein bars that might serve as food. It would have to be enough. The creature whimpered when she cleaned its wounds, and she talked to it constantly. She did not know if it understood her. She talked anyway. Her mother had always said that the sound of a gentle voice could heal as much as any medicine. You're going to be okay, she told it. I know it hurts. I know. But you're going to be okay. I've got you now. You're safe. Hours passed. Elena should have finished her shift and gone home. Instead, she called the manager and said she was sick. She stayed with the creature. She fed it bits of protein bar, which it ate weekly. She wrapped it in her jacket when it shivered. She sang the songs her mother used to sing to her when she was small and afraid. The other customers left one by one until the diner was empty except for a few regulars. Big Tom, the cook, who had spent 10 years in prison for killing a man who had hurt his sister. Old Margaret, who lived on the station and spent her small pension on coffee she could barely afford. Dave the trucker, who complained about everything but always tipped well. None of them asked about the creature. They saw Elena caring for it, and that was enough. They minded their own business. Then the door opened, and 3 men walked in. Elena recognized the type immediately. They wore expensive clothes that did not fit this part of the station. They carried weapons openly, not caring who saw. They looked at other people the way a person might look at furniture. Things to be used and discarded. Poachers, the same ones who had hurt the creature in the alley. They had come back to claim their prize. "Give us the animal," the leader said. He had a thin face and cold eyes. "Now, and maybe we won't hurt you too much." Elena's heart pounded. Her hand shook. Every survival instinct she had told her to step aside, to let them take the creature, to save herself. She had no weapon. She had no training. She was just a tired waitress who had been running from grief for 7 years. She picked up a kitchen knife and stepped between the poachers and the wounded creature. "No," she said. The leader laughed. "Are you stupid? Do you know what we could do to you?" "I don't care," Elena said. Her voice was shaking, but her feet were planted. "He's hurt. He's scared. And you're not touching him." "He?" The leader smiled. "It's an animal. It's merchandise. It's worth more than you'll make in 100 lifetimes. Step aside." "No." The leader raised his weapon. His finger touched the trigger, and then Big Tom stepped out of the kitchen, holding a frying pan like a club. Old Margaret stood up from her table, fragile but furious. Dave the trucker blocked the door, his massive arms crossed over his chest. "Lady said no," Tom growled. The leader looked around. His confidence flickered. These people were not threats. He could kill them all in seconds. But something in their eyes made him hesitate. They were not afraid. They were not calculating their chances. They had simply decided that this was wrong, and they would not allow it, even if it cost them everything. "This is insane," the leader said. "You don't even know what that thing is." "Don't need to," Margaret said. "She's helping it." That's enough. The poachers exchanged glances. Something passed between them. Some understanding that this situation had become too complicated, too strange, too unpredictable. They had not expected this. They had expected fear and compliance. Instead, they had found something else. They left. Elena stood there for a long moment, the knife still in her shaking hand. Then her legs gave out and she sat down hard on the floor. Tom brought her water. Margaret patted her shoulder. Dave went back to complaining about the food. None of them made a big deal of what had happened. They had done what was right. That was all. That was all. It did not require discussion or praise or explanation. Outside the window, hidden in shadows, the Dragon Emperor watched with ancient eyes that burned with something he had not felt in thousands of years. Wonder. The ship was bigger than some moons. It had waited in folded space near the station, invisible to all sensors, ready to destroy everything within 1,000 kilometers if the Emperor gave the word. It was called the Eternal Flame, and it had been Varaxis's home for 3,000 years. Elena stood at a window that stretched from floor to ceiling and watched the stars slide past. She had never seen anything so beautiful. She had never felt so small. KY or as needed the healing chambers on the ship. His wounds had been too severe for Elena's simple care, and without proper treatment, he might have died. So Viraxis had brought them both aboard, and now they were traveling to the heart of the Dragon Empire, and Elena still could not quite believe any of this was real. "You are quiet." She turned. Viraxis stood behind her, wearing his humanoid form. He had kept the black scales and the burning eyes, but he had made himself smaller, less terrifying. She wondered if he had done it for her comfort. "Just thinking," she said. 3 weeks ago, I was serving coffee to truckers. Now I'm on a ship bigger than my home colony, talking to a dragon emperor. It's a lot. Do you regret helping my son? Elena considered the question. No, she said finally. I don't regret helping anyone. I might regret where it leads me sometimes, but never the helping itself. Viraxis was quiet for a long moment. I have been trying to understand you, he said. I have been trying to find the logic in what you did. You gained nothing from helping Kiris. You risked everything. By any reasonable calculation, you should have walked away. Reasonable calculation, Elena repeated. Is that how you see the world? Everything calculated? Everything measured? It is how I have survived for 10,000 years. Survived, Elena said. But have you lived? Viraxis stared at her. No one had spoken to him like this in millennia. No one had dared. But Elena did not seem to realize she was supposed to be afraid. Or perhaps she simply did not care. I don't understand the question, he admitted. Elena turned back to the window. When I was a little girl, she said, my mother used to tell me that life wasn't about surviving. Anyone can survive. Life is about the moments between the surviving. The meals shared with people you love. The jokes that make you laugh until your stomach hurts. The feeling of helping someone who needs it. Those are the moments that make life worth living. Your mother sounds wise. She was. Elena's voice grew soft. She died when I was 16, along with everyone else I loved. Viraxis did not know what to say. He had lived so long that death had become meaningless to him. Everyone died eventually. Stars died. Galaxies died. What was one human woman among the countless trillions who had come and gone? But looking at Elena's face, at the old grief that still lived in her eyes, he felt something stir in his chest. Something painful and strange. I am sorry, he said. The words felt awkward in his mouth. He could not remember the last time he had said them. Elena smiled at him. It was a sad smile, but it was real. Thank you. That means more than you probably know. In the weeks that followed, Viraxis found himself seeking her out. He told himself it was curiosity. This strange human who had defied every expectation, who had stood against him without hope of victory, who treated him like a person instead of a god. He wanted to understand her. That was all Dot, but slowly, without realizing it, he began to change. He started joining her for meals. Dragons did not need to eat often, but he found he enjoyed sitting across from her while she told stories about her life. She had traveled so much, seen so many things. Her perspective was so different from his own. You conquered the Valtherian Empire, she said one evening, reading from a history tablet. 12 billion people. You burned their capital from orbit. They refused to submit, Viraxis said. They left me no choice. Did you try negotiating? Viraxis frowned. They were inferior. Why would I negotiate? Because maybe they had something to teach you. Because maybe burning 12 billion people isn't actually the best solution to every problem. Because maybe, just maybe, power isn't the only thing that matters. No one had ever criticized him like this. Viraxis felt his anger rising, his ancient pride demanding that he put this insolent mortal in her place. But then he looked at her face. She was not afraid. She was not trying to manipulate him. She simply believed what she was saying, and she was honest enough to say it. What would you have done? He asked. Talked to them. Listened to them. Found out what they needed and what I could offer. Found a solution where everyone won something. And if they still refused, Elena shrugged. Then I would have tried again. And again. And again. Because 12 billion lives are worth a lot of trying. Viraxis thought about this for a long time. Kiris recovered slowly. The healing chambers repaired his body, but his spirit took longer. He and his father spoke for the first time in years. Really spoke, not shouting, not arguing, just talking. "I was wrong," Viraxis told his son one day. Elena had convinced him to say it, had spent 3 hours explaining why those 3 words mattered. "I put duty before love. I put the Empire before my family. I forgot that you are not just my heir. You are my son," Kiris cried. He had not cried in front of his father since he was a hatchling. But Elena sat beside him and held his hand and told Viraxis that crying was okay. Crying was healthy. Crying was how people healed. Viraxis did not understand, but he was beginning to learn. On the last night before they reached the dragon homeworld, Elena found him standing alone on the observation deck, staring at the stars. "You've been alive for 10,000 years, she said. "In all that time, did you ever have a friend?" Viraxis thought about it. He had had servants, soldiers, advisors, subjects, but a friend? Someone who saw him as a person, not a title. "No," he admitted. "I don't think I did." Elena stood beside him and looked at the stars. "That sounds lonely. I never thought of it that way. I thought power was enough. I thought ruling was enough. I thought being feared and obeyed was the same as being fulfilled." He paused. "I was wrong." Elena smiled. "You know what? That might be the most human thing you've ever said." The Dragon Emperor, master of 3 galaxies, looked at this small mortal woman who had somehow become the most important person in his ancient life. "Perhaps," he said, "that is not such a bad thing." 5 years passed. Elena stood on the balcony of her home, watching the twin suns of Draconis Prime set behind mountains of pure crystal. The sky turned colors that human eyes were not designed to see. Colors that still took her breath away. Even after all this time, so much had changed. When they had arrived at the dragon homeworld, Viraxis had offered her anything she wanted. Wealth beyond imagination. A palace of her own. A title that would make her one of the most powerful beings in 3 galaxies. She had asked for a small house, a garden, and the freedom to leave whenever she wished. Viraxis had been confused. His advisors had been horrified. A human living among dragons as an equal? It was unthinkable. It was improper. It was against everything they had believed for 10,000 years. Elena had not cared. And slowly, neither had Viraxis. He had given her more than she asked for, of course. The small house was actually quite large by human standards. The garden was tended by creatures that had evolved specifically to grow beautiful things. And the freedom to leave had become the freedom to go anywhere, to do anything, to speak to anyone, including the Emperor himself. She had become his advisor. Not officially at first. She was just the strange human woman who had saved his son, the one who sometimes joined him for meals and asked uncomfortable questions. But her questions had a way of changing things. "Why do you demand tribute from conquered worlds?" She had asked one day. "Because they are conquered. They owe me. But if you didn't take tribute, if you let them keep their resources and build their own strength, wouldn't they become more valuable? Wouldn't they contribute more to the Empire in the long run?" Viraxis had frowned. "That is not how things are done. Maybe that's why things aren't working as well as they could." He had ignored her at first. Then he had thought about it. Then, 6 months later, he had quietly reduced tributes on 3 border worlds as an experiment. The results had been remarkable. Without the burden of tribute, those worlds had flourished. Their economies had grown. Their people had become loyal not because they feared the dragons, but because they were grateful. They had started contributing ideas, innovations, solutions to problems the Empire had struggled with for centuries. The experiment had expanded. And expanded. And expanded. Now, 5 years later, the Dragon Empire looked nothing like it had before. Conquered peoples were called partners. Tribute had become trade. Fear had become respect. The iron fist had opened into an extended hand. Not everyone was happy about it. The old guard grumbled about weakness and tradition. Some had even attempted rebellion, had tried to remove Viraxis and install a more proper emperor. They had failed. Not because Viraxis had crushed them with overwhelming force, though he could have. They had failed because no one had supported them. The people of the Empire, dragon and non-dragon alike, had grown to love their emperor. Not fear him, love him, all because a waitress had asked questions. Elena heard footsteps behind her and smiled. She did not need to turn around to know who it was. "You are thinking again," Viraxis said. He came to stand beside her, his humanoid form warm and solid and familiar. "I can tell by the way you scrunch your nose." "I do not scrunch my nose." "You absolutely do. It is very endearing." Elena laughed. Their relationship had evolved over the years into something neither of them had expected. Not romance, exactly. Dragons and humans were too different for that. But something deeper, perhaps. A partnership. A friendship. A bond that transcended species and lifespans and everything else that should have kept them apart. "I was thinking about home," she said. "About the colony. About everyone who died." Viraxis was quiet. He had learned, over the years, that sometimes people needed silence more words. "I used to be so angry," Elena continued. "At the company that killed them. At the universe for letting it happen. And myself for surviving when they didn't. But now..." She shook her head. "Now, I think maybe everything happens for a reason. Maybe I survived so I could be here. So I could find Kiris in that alley. So I could help change things." "You have changed many things," Viraxis said. "More than you know. We have changed things. Together." He smiled. It was still strange to see a being of such power smile, but Elena had grown used to it. Together, he agreed. Far below, in the city that spread beneath the palace, a celebration was happening. Today marked the anniversary of the Partnership Accords, the document that had formally transformed the Dragon Empire from a dictatorship into a cooperative. Representatives from 1,000 worlds had gathered to celebrate, to trade, to build connections. And at the center of it all, organizing events and greeting guests, and generally making sure everything ran smoothly, was KYR's Dot. The young dragon had grown into himself over the past 5 years. He had found purpose not in ruling, but in serving. He ran the Partnership Council, the body that represented all the peoples of the Empire. He listened to their concerns and brought them to his father. He worked tirelessly to make sure every voice was heard. He was happy, truly happy. And Viraxis, watching his son flourish, had finally understood what Elena had been trying to teach him all along. Power meant nothing if you had no one to share it with. Ruling meant nothing if your people did not love you. Living for 10,000 years meant nothing if you spent those years alone. "I never thanked you properly," Viraxis said. Elena raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "For everything. Saving my son. For standing against me when anyone else would have fled. For asking the questions no one else would ask. For teaching me how to live instead of just survive." Elena's eyes grew wet. Even after 5 years, his gratitude still touched her. "You don't have to thank me. I just did what anyone would do." "No," Viraxis said firmly. "You did what only you would do. What only a human would do. Your species is remarkable, Elena-chan. You live such short lives. You suffer so much. And yet you still find reasons to be kind. You still choose compassion over cruelty, hope over despair. It is the most extraordinary thing I've ever witnessed. That's what makes us human, I guess." "Yes," Viraxis said. "And it is changing the galaxy." Elena looked out at the setting suns, at the crystal mountains, at the city full of celebration. She thought about her mother and father and little brother. She thought about all the people who had helped her along the way, all the small kindnesses that had kept her going. She thought about a wounded creature in an alley, and a choice that had seemed so simple at the time. "You know," she said, "when I picked up Kiris that night, I never imagined any of this. I wasn't trying to change the galaxy. I was just trying to help one scared creature who was hurt and alone. And that," Varaxis said, "is exactly why it worked. You did not seek power or reward or recognition. You simply saw someone who needed help, and you helped. That is the most powerful force in the universe, Elena. More powerful than any weapon, any army, any empire. Simple, genuine, unrewarded kindness." Elena leaned against him, this ancient being who had become her dearest friend. "You've gotten very wise in your old age. I had a good teacher." They stood together in silence, watching the stars come out one by one. Somewhere out there, on countless worlds, people were living better lives because of what had started in a dirty alley behind a cheap diner. Treaties signed, wars prevented, suffering reduced, hope kindled, all because one tired waitress had chosen to be kind. In the great archives of the Dragon Empire, historians would debate for centuries exactly when the transformation had begun. They would analyze policies and treaties and economic data. They would write long papers about political evolution and social change. But those who knew the truth would tell a simpler story. Once upon a time, a human woman carried a wounded dragon, and the universe was never the same.